At a glittering company gala, a longtime janitor was singled out as the punchline of a cruel joke. The smug young manager who challenged her to play the piano expected clumsy notes and easy laughter. But Martha Lewis had a hidden gift that would silence the entire room and bring the CEO himself to tears. And just wait until you hear the stunning turn this story took and how true talent claimed its rightful place in the end. The ballroom shimmered. Crystal chandeliers spilled honeyed light onto polished marble floors, their glow reflecting off glassware set in perfect symmetry. Soft strains of background music drifted from hidden speakers, almost drowned out by the low hum of conversation. Every surface gleamed, the silver trays, the champagne flutes, even the marble columns that rose toward the ornate ceiling. Clusters of executives in tailored suits stood near the buffet tables, holding wine glasses by the stems, their laughter crisp and practiced. Every nod, every handshake seemed rehearsed, as if the whole event was part of an unspoken performance. The air carried the scent of fresh flowers from towering centerpieces, mixed with the faint aroma of hors d'oeuvres. Near the back of the hall, partially in shadow, Martha Lewis moved quietly between the tables. At 58, she had perfected the art of being unnoticed. Her navy janitor's uniform was softened and faded from years of wash cycles, the fabric clinging loosely to her frame. The white soles of her sneakers were worn thin, the laces frayed at the ends. In one hand, she carried a small spray bottle and a neatly folded rag. She didn't rush. She never did. Martha's movements were deliberate, her eyes scanning for smudges on glass, crumbs on linen, any imperfection that would stand out to someone far more important than herself. She had been cleaning this building for 19 years, long enough to recognize the faces in the crowd, and long enough to know most of them didn't recognize hers. Across the room, a black Steinway grand piano sat under its own pool of light, polished to a mirror shine. The hired pianist was late. For now, the piano was just a silent ornament in a room full of noise. It was then that Blake Thompson, a young marketing manager with perfectly gelled hair and a suit that still had the sharp lines of fresh tailoring, turned away from his circle of colleagues. His eyes caught Martha's figure moving between tables. A slow, knowing smirk curled at the corner of his mouth. "Hey, Martha," he called out, his voice just loud enough to carry over the conversation. "Why don't you play something for us? Bet you can nail chopsticks." The remark landed like a pebble in a still pond. The laughter rippled out in waves. Not the warm laughter that invites someone in, but the brittle kind that draws a line between us and you. Martha didn't answer right away. She stood still for a moment, the rag resting in her palm, her gaze fixed somewhere past Blake and the smirking faces around him. They weren't asking her to play, they were daring her to try. And the dare wasn't about music, it was about reminding her where she stood in this room. Martha didn't move at first. The hum of conversation around her seemed to stretch, thinning into a kind of expectant silence. Her fingers tightened around the folded rag, the soft cotton bunching under her grip. Her eyes lingered on the polished black piano at the far end of the room. What no one in that hall knew was that music had once been the center of her life. Every Sunday for more than 30 years, she had played the piano at New Hope Baptist Church, filling the small sanctuary with hymns and gospel melodies. Long before that, when she was just 6, her father, Henry Lewis, a gentle jazz pianist with hands that could turn notes into silk, had sat her on the piano bench and taught her scales by ear. He'd told her, "You don't just play music, baby, you breathe it." But life had a way of covering music in layers of dust. 2 jobs, bills that never stopped coming, children who needed shoes, books, braces. The piano stayed in her heart, but it was pushed into a quiet corner, visited only in rare, private moments. Blake's smirk was still there. The small cluster of colleagues around him exchanged knowing looks, waiting to be entertained. Not by her skill, but by her awkwardness. The sting of their mockery was sharp, but it did not bend her posture. If anything, it straightened it. In her eyes, there was no trace of humiliation, only a calm, grounded dignity. She began to walk toward the piano. The faint click of her sneakers on the marble floor cut through the soft murmur of the crowd. A few people chuckled under their breath, expecting an off-key attempt at a nursery tune. Even the CEO, Richard Harrington, glanced over with a faint, almost indulgent smile, as if he were humoring a sideshow between courses. Martha reached the bench. For a moment, she stood still, her hand resting lightly on the smooth lacquered surface. Then she sat, adjusting her posture with the easy familiarity of someone who had done this for years. She placed her fingers on the cool ivory keys, not pressing yet, just feeling their weight and promise. Her eyes drifted shut, and in that instant, her shoulders loosened, her breath deepened. It was as if she had stepped out of the grand, glittering ballroom and into another place entirely, a place where she and the piano were the only two souls in the world. The first note rose like a drop of water in still air, delicate, deliberate, but carrying a weight of intention. Then another, and another, threading together into the opening lines of Clair de Lune. Her fingers did not stumble or search. They flowed with the practiced certainty of someone who had lived inside these notes for a lifetime. The sound was pure, so pure it seemed to slice through the layers of chatter and clinking glass. Conversations trailed off mid-sentence. A waiter, mid-step, slowed without meaning to. Wine glasses were lowered to white tablecloths. Even the faint rustle of dresses and suits seemed to still, as though the entire hall had taken a collective breath and decided not to release it just yet. The mocking curve of Blake Thompson's smile softened, then vanished entirely. One by one, the smirks in the crowd faded into something else, something unguarded. Martha's hands moved as if they were painting light onto the keys. She let the Debussy linger just long enough to fill the space with its soft melancholy, then, without breaking the spell, she drifted into a gospel improvisation. The shift was seamless, the refined elegance of classical music melting into the deep, soul-fed warmth of church hymns. Every note carried something personal, the ache of nights spent alone with only a worn piano for company, the quiet joy of Sundays filled with voices singing together, the silent resilience it took to keep going year after year. The music rose and fell like the ocean, swelling, breaking, then retreating into moments so gentle they felt like a whisper. People leaned forward without realizing it. A man in the back lowered his phone, forgetting the email he had been typing. A woman near the front clasped her hands together as if steadying herself against the pull of what she was hearing. Then Martha shifted again, this time into a slow, aching blues melody, her father's favorite. The notes bent and lingered, full of longing and memory. Her left hand grounded the rhythm like a heartbeat, while her right traced lines of sorrow and beauty in the air. Richard Harrington, the CEO, sat motionless at his table. Somewhere between the second and third measure, his eyes began to glisten. He was no longer seeing the woman who swept the floors at the end of the night. In that moment, he was looking at an artist, one who had quietly, without demand or announcement, opened her soul and laid it bare before everyone in the room. The final note lingered in the air, trembling for just a breath before dissolving into silence. For a moment, no one moved. The stillness felt almost sacred, as if breaking it too soon would erase the spell she had cast. Then, like a tide rushing in, the room erupted. The applause was not the scattered, polite kind given out of habit, but a deep, rolling wave of sound. People rose to their feet without thinking, their clapping sharp and unrelenting. Some smiled through damp eyes. Others simply stood in quiet awe, hands pressed together as if words would not be enough. Blake Thompson remained seated. He clapped once, twice, but his eyes stayed fixed on the tablecloth. The smirk he had worn earlier was nowhere to be found, replaced by the tight, uneasy awareness of someone forced to see themselves in a harsher light. At the center table, Richard Harrington rose. He didn't hurry. His steps across the marble were steady, deliberate. When he reached her, he extended both hands, taking hers gently but firmly. Up close, his voice was different, lower, quieter, carrying something unpolished. "I had no idea," he said, his throat catching just enough to make the words heavier. "Thank you for sharing this gift with us. You've reminded me what real talent looks like." Martha's lips curved into the smallest smile. She didn't answer right away. She didn't need to. Her music had already spoken for her. From that night forward, the company's annual gala began with Martha at the piano. Not as a novelty act, not as a favor, but as the headliner. Her name was printed on the program, the lights dimmed for her entrance, and when she played, the room listened. She still worked her shift. She still moved quietly through the halls with her spray bottle and rag. But now, when people passed her in the corridor, they looked her in the eye. Some greeted her by name. And though she never sought attention, she knew that in one unforgettable evening, she had shifted something in the hearts of everyone in that ballroom. The woman they once overlooked had brought a CEO to tears and left an entire room with a lesson they would carry long after the music faded.